The Kent School District Board meetings are held in public on the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month at 7 p.m. at the Administration Center in accordance to the Washington State Open Public Meetings Act. Regular meetings include presentations and reports dealing with district operations, as well as time set aside for public comment. Now, here are your Kent School District Board of Directors. Welcome to tonight's board meeting.
All right. There are chairs up in front for those of you who are standing in back. We've got almost a whole row of chairs up here, so if you'd like to come up and sit, that would be great. Here. Go. Yes, no, maybe. Okay. Well, I would like to call our meeting to order. I have invited Hunter Lewis and Chase Allen to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So would you please stand? Thank you, guys. Well, welcome to our meeting. We're one of our board members, Agda Burchard, is in California right now on work, so we're excusing her. This is a meeting of the board, which is held in public to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. We allow opportunity for public comments later in the agenda. If you would like to address the board, fill out a card. It has the blue frame on it. It's back there on the table. And bring it up to the dais at any point in time. Just bring it up to either end. If you wish to speak to an agenda item, please indicate on the card and your name will be called at that portion of the agenda. You will have 3 minutes. Okay, well, we'll just take care of that when we get there. Dr. Watts, are there any changes in the agenda?
President DeBruler, members of the board, Ms. Everett, there were no changes made to the agenda this evening.
All right, thank you. So we are moving right into our recognition. We have Israel Vela, who is going to talk about the National Award recognition.
Thank you very much, members of the board, President DeBruler, Dr. Watts, Ms. Everett. I want to first thank you for the opportunity to recognize someone that we all know very well, Dave Lutz, today, and he'll be coming up here shortly when I invite him. I wanted to take a personal point of privilege since I do have the microphone and I am his supervisor to say a few words, and I'm also have invited a couple of guests that you will also know. I'll introduce them in just a bit. What I want to do first of all is just to, for those of you who may or may not know, Dave has for 20, I think it's 27 plus years that he's been in the district as a athletic director. He's been a coach, he's been a teacher, a number of other things, and it would take me a while to read off all of his accolades, but tonight it's a different time, and we wanted to share specifically a few other things about Dave. One of the first things I wanted to share is that he's had an impact on athletics programming at the local, state, and national level and been recognized for that. But I just wanted to take a moment to share some of the attributes that I know that I've learned from Dave and know of him because I've been in the district for 20 years, not the 27 plus, but around 20 years. And so I've learned a lot from Dave and about his attributes, and I just want to share a couple of those with you. One of the first ones is his integrity. When it comes to athletics, we worked together a while back as I was working with enrollment and transfers and some other things. And what I remember is sitting down, being a thought partner with Dave on, folks that wanted to come into Kent and play sports. But as it relates to his integrity, he basically taught me the rules, the WIA rules on, so what's the deal on transfers and how many years they need to sit out or at such. And it's like, wow, that's the first thing that Dave wanted to make sure that all of our players were and athletes were up to speed on the compliance pieces in terms of WIA. So that's one of the things that I remember over the years, his integrity. The other piece that I'll share is, this is back to his coaching years, is his sportsmanship, his attention to sportsmanship, both for athletes, parents in the stands, coaches, whoever might be attending, including our referees. And that's what I remember a lot about, and watching and observing him. You see him at French Field pretty late at nights for football games and other track meets and such. And what I learn is how he interacts with players and coaches and adults, and how he stresses sportsmanship. That's another critical attribute that I wanted to share. And the last one before I invite our guest to speak on behalf of Dave is really about family. He may or may not know this, but having been a principal at Meridian Elementary, his daughter, if I'm not mistaken, actually taught at Meridian Elementary, and I wanted to bring this attribute up, that he's really, he's about family and his grandkids. He thinks the world of his family, and he also not only exhibits that with his own family, but that's also true with his KSD family. And have been privileged this year to be able to again experience that, having returned to Kent. So I just wanted to take a moment to do that. I'd like to now invite up a few guests, some of which you may know. Jim Barrios, as you know, come on up, Jim. Former board of directors as well as current Kent City Council. I also wanted to invite Lisa Kelly and Joanne Daughtry, who are athletic directors at their respective schools, KM and Kentwood, who are going to also speak. So if you guys would like to come on up. And this is where we get to embarrass him, right? So Dave, you want to come on up, please? And then I'd like to turn over to Jim Barrios.
Thank you, Israel. You know, I've never had the opportunity to be on this side. And I look up there and it seems so small. But I can't even see the audience, I'm so short. Thank you, Israel, for this opportunity. And it's such a great pleasure to be able to come up here representing our city and our community to say some positive things about this great gentleman here. And I want to start off by saying that I served on the school board for 5.5 years. I had the pleasure of serving on our school board. And during that period of time, I also, and then some, had the opportunity to be a volunteer coach in the Kent School District. Specifically, can everybody see me? I'm going to go over here. It's just so intimidating. I don't know what that says, but I don't have my glasses on. But I had the opportunity to coach at KM, at Kent Meridian High School, as a volunteer wrestling coach and a track coach, and had the opportunity to work with Lisa. Lisa. But one of the things that I really impacted me as I was a coach and a mentor, because that's what coaches do, right, is that I remember coaches talking about this guy named Dave Lutz. Well, I knew who Dave Lutz was, and I didn't realize that he had been a coach for years. And they kept talking about this story, and I think every year I heard the same story. And it's the story about when he was the head coach for Kentwood football. And I'm sure that some of you have heard this story this particular year, and I'm not going to name the year because it may incriminate some people. They may be in the audience. But this particular year, he was a head football coach. Outstanding year. The team was going to play in the final state championship game. And a day or two before the game, a couple of key players, 4 to 5 key players, and Dave will tell the story better than I will because he was there. But this is how it was told to me several times. Went out and smoked pot and got caught by the police department. The police department let him go. And but they went to Dave and thought that they should tell Dave, hey, here's what happened. And Dave, without even thinking about it, knew what the right thing was, and that was to follow the rules that they had established. And that is, if you get caught drinking or doing drugs, you're not going to play. So he pulled these 4 or 5 students, key players, and they didn't get to play in that game. What a message. They lost the game, but what a message, not only to those players, but to those families. And I'm sure that some of them struggled a little bit, but also to the community. And Dave, you don't realize this, but coaches, think about that decision, what a tough decision it must have been. But for you, it wasn't a tough decision because it was the right thing to do. You mentioned integrity. Boy, it doesn't get any better than that. So I am so proud to be able to come up here and talk about Dave's integrity, his reputation. Bill Boyce would have been here. Those of you that don't know Bill Boyce, he served on the school board for 16 plus years, and he's in Cabo right now, by the way. So I'm here to represent the City Council and the City of Kent. But thank you, Dave, for being the example to the entire community.
To invite Joanne and Lisa, if they'd like to say a few words as well.
I'm Joanne Daughtry. I'm the athletic director at Kentwood High School, and I say that very proudly because this man was my inspiration on getting involved at a level other than coaching, and integrity's been used a lot. Dave taught me one of the huge things was to listen to people, whether it's parents, athletes, coaches, to listen to people and make sure that they felt heard. And I think that's incredibly important. Too often, people will discount one of those groups or another, and it was important for Dave, and he passed that on to me. I think if it hadn't been for Dave, I wouldn't be the athletic director at Kentwood. I've known him for 34 years. We both started when we were 5, and he was recognized at the national level in December for his work with the state and with football and high school athletics, and it was a well-deserved recognition and long overdue because he has been a major influence in both the state and national levels. So, great job, Dave.
And now, President DeBruler, if you'd help me with introducing the award. I've got it with me, and we can award it to Dave. Oh, Lisa, go ahead.
I just want to tell Dave how much I appreciate him, and the athletic director job at Kim Meridian kind of dropped in my lap. It wasn't something I was out seeking, but Dave has been so patient, answered all of my questions. I'm sure he thought some of them were kind of silly and stupid, but I've had a really good time getting to know Dave and the other athletic directors. I do, same stuff that all these guys are saying. He's taught me so much about how to ask questions and how to deal with coaches and just the integrity. And I hear stories all the time from people that I meet at a bunch of sporting events. Oh, you work in Kent. Do you know Dave Lutz? Yes. He's such a nice guy, and they'll proceed to tell me several stories. So he's just made such a big impact in our state and our district, and I just appreciate people like Dave that come in and, his number one goal is do what's right for kids, and that's what I try to do, and hopefully I can be a lot like him as I continue to grow in my athletic directorship. I don't know what you call that. So thanks, Dave.
So now, the moment we've been waiting for. So for contributions to interscholastic athletics at the local, state, and national levels, and for building highly successful athletic programs supporting student athletes across the district. Dave Lutz.
Thank you so much for serving us.
Well, good evening. I was a little worried that they were lining up a roast here, but I thank each and every one of you for your kind comments. I appreciate it very much. And to the board, President DeBuehler and Dr. Watts and school board members, I've been in the district 40 years. 27 was as the district athletic director. And I'm very honored and humbled to have gone back to Nashville to receive that award. It was amazing sitting in front of 1,000 athletic directors, your colleagues from across the nation. To be picked as one of the top 8 was very humbling to me. Nobody does anything of significance on their own. There's always people that are there that help you achieve what you achieve. And certainly all of these people, Jim when he was on the board, and Joanne, and Lisa, I'm sorry, I'm having a brain, and Israel, my supervisor and longtime friend. So I just thank all of them, but I thank the board and the previous boards that have always been so supportive of athletics and has made Kent a great place to, and a great reputation for athletics. And I hope we uphold that integrity and the honesty that they see that in our programming. So, and all of the administrators I work with at the district office are all so supportive. I try to promote athletics as an integral part of the educational process, that we're an extension of the classroom, teaching the same values that you learn in the classroom that you can learn in the fields and the courts, and that they interact and they cross over, and that our kids are getting good experiences. So thank you. I appreciate it. It's been very honoring and humble. Thank you. Oh, I almost did what I did my first year of coaching. I was through with the banquet at the end of the season. My wife was sitting in the back, and I forgot, as a rookie coach at Kentwood my first year, to introduce and thank her. But Linda, stand up. Linda, stand up. Linda and I are celebrating our 42nd wedding anniversary next week, and she's been here. The reason I say that is she's been with me through the whole ride, and she's been my rock, trust me. So thank you very much.
We're going to put the next two together, the Washington State Achievement Award and the School of Distinction Award. We'll have everybody come up at once. So we've got Dr. Mac Mitchell and our SIOs. Are you coming up? Okay.
So this is a continuation of the award ceremony that we started last time. But President DeBruehler, members of the board, Superintendent Watts, and Ms. Everett. It's a pleasure to recognize 4 more principals who have done extraordinary work in Kent tonight. But before I hand this over to Dr. Borshed, I was thinking about how we celebrate this when we get the award in Auburn, then we celebrate it out at the school, and now we're going to celebrate it again tonight. But I want to give it a slightly different spin. And here's my spin about people who distinguish themselves for excellence in the world. They do it in ways that sometimes have caused them to overcome a fear of success that exists everywhere. So here it is. It's a poem. Our deepest fear is not that our school is inadequate. Our deepest fear is that our school is powerful beyond measure. It is our success, not our failure, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who is my school to be brilliant, rigorous, innovative, collaborative? Actually, who is my school not to be that? Our playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other schools won't feel insecure around you. It's not just in some of us, it's in every school. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other schools permission to do the same. And I think that's what the 4 leaders who are here tonight have done for the rest of the schools in Kent. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Borshed, and she will introduce them.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. Good evening, President DeBruehler, members of the board, Dr. Watts, and Kathy Everett. It is with extreme pleasure that I bring forward the following schools for tonight's awards. I can't see everybody. Mr. Price has been the principal at Crestwood for 2 years, where he works with an amazing staff who continues to set high expectations each and every day, and also committed to meeting the social emotional needs of all students. As the instructional leader, he continues to focus on a comprehensive framework for effective teaching and learning. Mr. Price and his staff, Mr. Jeff Schultz and Cindy Prescott, thank you. I am now proud to share Horizon under the leadership of Miles Early and Amarinda Baines, who will accept 2 awards tonight, 2016 School of Distinction and 2016 Washington Achievement Award for the Achievement Gap Reduction. Miles Early has been the principal at Horizon for 4 years, and this is the first year for Amarinda Baines as the assistant principal. There are many things that contribute to the success of Horizon Hawks, but most importantly, it's the staff who go the extra mile to understand the whole child, targeted instruction, the laser focus on provided for the support staff, or provided by the support staff, and the daily support parents provide by sending their students to school, ready to learn each and every day. And we also have behavior intervention. Yes. Next, I would like to present Grass Lake under the leadership of Dan Irvine with the Washington Achievement Award for High Progress and High ELL Growth with Mr. Lawrence. Dan has been the principal at Grass Lake for 3 years, and during his leadership, there has been a heightened focus on assessment in the moment, reteaching, developing the whole child, creating opportunities for students to exercise leadership as citizens of Grass Lake community through the ASB process, engaging families in two-way communication, providing staff time for effective PLCs, and sharing insightful reflections on student growth. However, none of this can happen without the dedicated staff, students, and families of Grass Lake. Finally, I am also here to present Martin Sertoon under the leadership of Greg Kroll and Khadijah Alshami with the Washington State Award in Overall Excellence, High Progress, High Math Growth, High ELL Growth, and Language Acquisition. Wow. Greg Kroll has been the principal at Martin Sertoon for more than 10 years, and Khadijah has joined him and has been there for 2 years. He also has with him Debbie Sells, who is a 4th grade teacher, and Michelle Rudolph, who is a 5th grade teacher there. During his 10 years, he has set a solid foundation for literacy instruction, along with his intense focus on power standards. Grit and perseverance has also helped facilitate the student growth. In addition, the strong support staff who focus on school-wide math dialogue, content support in ELA, and a solid foundation in science continue to support student success at Martin Sertoon. Congratulations to all of our schools for collaborative efforts and continued focus on closing the achievement gap. In the words of John Quincy Adams, if your actions inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. Thank you for your leadership.
At this point, if you just want to move up here, we'll take some pictures. Are we taking one at a time, one group at a time, or? Okay. They got the banner, okay. It's taking a couple minutes to take some photos. Back this way.
Before I head over there, I just wanted to do a little test of our board members and our leadership team and our community. At Horizon, we're very proud of our mantra that we have, which is what we're all about. So I'm going to start with the first part and see if you can fill in with the second part, see if we're really getting out in the community. And that is, and of course my staff can help along. Horizon Hawks. What do you say? One more time. Horizon Hawks, succeed every day. There we go. Okay. We got to keep growing that. That's hard, right? We're athletes.
Very much. We still got.
Yeah, we got one more.
Israel? All right. Then you gotta hold it up here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, we're moving into our presentations. Our first one is the affirmative action plan for 2017-19. And I see that Maria Martin and Robert Humes are in place. So
We are. We're ready.
Take it over.
Okay. Good evening, President Jabruler, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Everett. We're pleased tonight to share with you an update to the 2016 version of the Affirmative Action Plan. You have the actual report. Human Resources will provide an update to this plan every 2 years and at the completion of a census. Robert Humes, Director of Human Resources, was the lead on this project, and Robert has extensive experience writing, reviewing, and evaluating affirmative action plans for a wide array of Washington state agencies. So he has seen many, many, many affirmative action plans, and luckily we have him here working on ours. So I'm going to allow him to go ahead and take it from here.
So President DeBuehler, members of the board, Dr. Watts and Mrs. Everett, here's an overview of tonight's update on the affirmative action plan. So I'd like to begin with discussing what affirmative action is and what it is not. Thank you, Carl. IT, always on it. So affirmative action is not an attempt to create quotas for employment opportunities, nor is it a means to allow employment opportunities to unqualified applicants. Affirmative action is the engaged effort to improve opportunities for historically underserved groups and provide access to employment and training for qualified applicants and employees in historically underserved groups. And the affirmative action plan supports the district blueprint goal 4 to recruit, hire, develop, and retain a diverse and premier workforce. Upon review of the representation of underserved groups within our current workforce availability, we found restraints within the current workforce availability. So certificated employee groups have lower numbers of minority representation versus classified non-represented employee groups. Diversity among classified work groups, we have professionals representing underserved groups that make up 21 to 52% of the available classified employee groups in South King County. And what this means is that King County provides a richness of community diversity, and there are opportunities to continue to foster relationships with skilled workers across our employee groups to increase representation over time. So looking at the data, certificated and non-represented employment categories are on the left and are highlighted in the tan color. Total minority is listed on the near right column and is also highlighted in tan. In green, we've highlighted the classified employment categories and the total minority for these groups. And as discussed, we see increased representation of minority groups in these employment categories. And so how does KSD measure up to availability? I'm glad you asked. Well, workforce availability is defined as skilled labor force in an employment area based on U.S. Census data. Underutilization is defined as the degree to which representation of the available underserved group within the workplace is below workforce availability. So what this means is that minority representation and women within the certificated and non-represented employment categories can excel. We exceed the levels of availability, which can be representative of the in-state and out-of-state recruitment planning over the last few years, increasing the strength of KSD's employment brand. And our custodians are the only classified employment category with no areas of underutilization. In our maintenance and trades, we find some areas of underutilization. The underserved groups make up 6.1% of the employment category, and the total workforce availability is 21%. And as we review this information, let's take a look at the solutions-oriented focus on our maintenance area. So we know that trades are historically represented by white males, and the trades group are working to increase their own representation with these underserved groups. And the KSD maintenance employees also have low levels of turnover. That makes it infrequent hirings for us in those areas. And maintenance leaders are also aware of this underutilization and are working with HR to increase these opportunities where possible. So taking a larger view at the district, these are our 3 action steps, and I'll highlight one strategy from each of these action steps. It's beginning with recruitment. Recruitment systems will continue to offer ease of use and allow applicants to apply to open vacancies across the district, including temporary and substitute assignments, which have proven to result in permanent employment. Great opportunities there. For employee selection, the selection process will be evaluated on an annual basis to ensure the quality and efficiency of the hiring process, particularly in regards to the equity within the selection process. And finally, in training and retention, Human Resources will initiate an integrated onboarding program to ensure employees have the proper training, direction, and support as they begin their new careers with the district. I welcome any questions or comments to that context to this conversation.
Thank you, Robert. Questions or comments?
Want to go first?
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, do you want me to? Or?
I was asking my.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking this way so I couldn't.
Yes, I wanted to ask, I know several years ago I applied through the district, and I just thought it was a very comprehensive yet difficult process to apply in the system. And I wonder, are we keeping track of how many are starting applications and then just giving up? Because it takes you through a lot of questions and evidence, information that you need. Have we done anything to simplify that process, or are we thinking about doing that in conjunction with the affirmative action plan?
Absolutely. We have now integrated the Talent Ed recruit and hire system, which is more streamlined. It allows more mobile efficiencies for the individuals to apply, less steps for them. I think I also applied during the rain shadow days and understand some of that awkwardness of that program. We've shored up that time, and we have better efficiencies through the application process.
Thank you.
So greatly appreciate the availability and underutilized. We've been getting this presentation, I think this is my 6th time, and that's the first time, unless I'm wrong, that we've seen that. So it's very, very helpful. I hope next time, or maybe you can get this information to me later, the trend. So I don't know, because for 5 years at least, there's been pretty much no movement in people of color being better represented in our workforce as it goes to our students. So if you could get that information to me later, where we are historically in our progress, I'm thinking that we're a couple ticks better, but it is extremely helpful to have the availability, because that was, we were just spinning our wheels because the candidates aren't there.
Sure.
Okay.
And we will work to provide you with that information.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so my question was actually a little bit along that line, as far as what were we last year compared to, and then as far as your action steps that you had, how do those differ from what we've done in past years?
Sure. So in looking at the action steps, focusing on recruitment, that answer really is focused on the talent ed system. So putting that system in place, we've also are in the plans of implementing the onboard part of that application suite, which will greatly increase our efficiency across the applicant experience. And when we look at employment selection, I believe Matt Gerard has done an incredible job with increasing the efficiency of our hiring team. So placing more training and more awareness around the focus on implicit bias and some of those aspects that are blockages to employment when we think about affirmative action.
Thank you.
Trying to find where I read this, but what I really liked when I was reading the other information you gave us, that we're actually going out into the communities to look for the recruits, not just in a
passive recruitment.
Job fair, yeah,
sure,
yeah,
absolutely.
but we're actually, okay, we need some more people of color. Let's go to this area and let's go find some.
Absolutely. And we've sought ways to do that across our HR system. So not only with our standard recruitment practices, but also looking at substitute services. So we know that we have some great pipelining coming through our substitute services, especially for classified employees.
Yeah, and also the substitute paras and the substitute teachers, working with them so that they can move into the more permanent positions,
Absolutely.
which is great.
Mm-hmm.
So, well done.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. All right, moving on to our next presentation, ready to graduate. Graduation, class of 2017 graduation preparation. We have Dr. Harmon. Ready to go?
We are.
President DeBruler, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Everett. It's a pleasure to be here this evening and present to you our annual presentation about our current class of seniors. And so this presentation tonight is a little bit different than what you've seen historically. It tends to focus mostly on the assessment piece. This year we are combining both requirements for graduation, and then we'll also discuss that open-ended piece of our legislative possibilities. So we're going to start right away with the district percentage of students meeting assessment. And it's very important to focus on those kind of different categories. So meeting the English language arts assessment requirements, math requirements, science requirements, the proportion of students who met all of those requirements, and then just ELA and math. And we're talking about right now a current class of seniors that represents 1,842 students. So that was as of June 6th. Keep in mind that 2016-17 is still being lived, so there are still opportunities for our assessment and credit data to change. So then we look at assessment requirements by race ethnicity. The percentages are presented again in those two columns, percent meeting ELA and math, the percent of students who met all categories, all assessment requirements, and then our race and ethnic categories are listed by state and federal label with the counts in parentheses. The American Indian Alaskan Native population had less than 10 students, and so by law we're not supposed to put how many. I thought it was inappropriate to leave them out, so I just put that category there and then put less than 10. But that does represent that proportion for that group as well. Same thing by assessments by program. And so as you see when you look at these slides, there's definitely opportunities. So when we think about GAP, where those opportunities lie, especially with our program group. So performance is somewhat similar by race ethnicity, but not so much when you look at programs. So there are definitely assessment opportunities. And when you think about where those barriers are across which assessments. And so for example, you see larger differences, for example, in the percent of students who met all assessments versus those who met ELA and math when you look at our low-income students, versus that difference that exists. It's a little more than 2 percentage points when you look at special education. And so just thinking about kind of where those gaps are, kind of how we can make those process improvements as we think about our assessment requirements. But we know that it takes two pieces to graduate. So you've got to have your assessment requirements, but we've also got to have that course credit attainment. And so what you see here is a reminder of what the Washington State requires for the class of 2017, and then what Kent is requiring for the class of 2017. So we've always had a higher bar for course requirements and course attainment, and that's a positive, but I wanted that put out there as a reminder of what our students are required to do. And so we look at that again across the district. And so because, again, 2016-17 is still being lived, the way we categorize this is students need 23 credits to graduate. They have 6 course opportunities to do that during the regular day. And so earning a half credit in the remaining semester, any student that had at least 20 credits or more, we considered in that far right column of likely to meet their credit requirements. But you could also see the breakdown of students who already have the 23 credits, as well as the students who are sitting in that 20 to 23 credit group, and the students that have less than 20 credits. And so that group that has less than 20 credits, we'll consider them the least likely opportunities. It's not impossible that they can attain those credits, but they definitely have a harder road to go in this last semester than their colleagues. So again, we look at that across our race and ethnic subgroups. Colors remain the same. That goldenrod color, less than 20 credits. That middle group, again, that lighter green, 20 to 23 credits, and greater than 23 credits to the far right. And it's really interesting to see which subgroups have that preparedness and that level of readiness going into that last semester of their senior year. And so you look at the difference in our Asian students, 55, almost 56% of them have the 23 credits necessary in terms of course attainment already going into the second semester of their senior year with what they need, compared to some of our other subgroups. And so there are definitely, again, opportunities to think about how to leverage both pieces of that credit attainment piece. And the same thing with credit requirements by program. So again, we look and see where our students are and kind of where they're putting that risk. And what we see is across all of these groups, there's a large proportion of our students who are leaving it up to that last semester and the last minute, needing every opportunity to attain those credits and be able to graduate on time. But we know that it takes both, and so now we're going to talk about ready to graduate. And so this is the intersection of those two previous groups. So who has the assessment requirements and the credit attainment to be considered ready to graduate. And so this is the students who had 20 or more credits and have met all assessment requirements in that green bar. 7.9% have met the credits only, 7.3% met assessments only, and 7.7% have not met credit or assessment requirements. But it's that breakdown of kind of that entire 1,842 students, where they live along that spectrum. And we look at the same thing when we look at race and ethnic categories. And so again, met credits and assessments. We see that there are definitely opportunity groups. When we think about what we'd like to see, those meeting credits and assessments. And then we see that far end juxtaposition of did not meet credits or assessments. So we think about our Black African American student groups, our Hispanic Latino student groups as definite opportunities to grow that intersection. And then the same thing again by program. And so we see a similar story of students who are meeting both, and then the far extreme of students who are not meeting either, and then that breakdown in between. But there's definitely a group to leverage as we think about that next piece of legislative priorities and options of how that shifts. So we move into what are our current and legislative comparisons. So this is the district legislative comparison look. So we have the current requirements of who's ready to graduate. So 77.1% of our students have met all of our course requirements and passed all state required assessments. If we remove the science requirement, which is one legislative proposal, that shifts our district ready to graduate percentage to 80.1%. And there's a second legislative proposal, that third bar, that removes all assessment requirements, and that shifts that to 85%. So when we look at this by race ethnicity, it can be a bit busy slide, but we're going to kind of stagger into this. So this first bar is represented across our groups who are meeting the current requirements. So that is, again, credits and passing all assessments. Here, if we remove the science requirement, this is what the shift looks like. And so we see that there's a benefit and a shift for most groups. And you can see where science is a barrier for certain groups in a different way and has that impact than other groups. So for example, looking at the Black African American student group and that shift of almost 10 percentage points, compared to some other groups where it is just exactly 2 percentage points. So look at 2 or more races. So the impact of that science requirement by student ethnic group. And then the removal of all assessment requirements as we go across those groups and kind of how that impacts and shifts the ready to graduate proportions. And then we have the same thing by program. So current requirements, removal of the science requirement, and then removal of all 3. And so, like previous slides, we see that it's got the biggest impact when we look by program, not necessarily by race ethnicity. And so here we are, what we're all here to celebrate. And so I welcome questions or comments.
Thank you, Dr. Herman. Anybody want to start?
I'll start. So I guess my question is, so we know what this data is now. What are we doing so that next year when we look at these numbers, is that we should already know what our juniors are doing now against at least credit assessments? And so how are we closing those gaps so that we can get to that 100% graduation rate?
So what I hear are two questions kind of in there, Debbie. And so the first, I think, is more of a data question, an information question. So how do we get this into the hands as a pre rather than a post look? And so we've talked about strategies and plans to get data in the hands of schools from an assessment and credit perspective. So as they're entering their senior year, they can think about that. And then providing an update mid-year so that they're aware of, so they can think about it for scheduling purposes and other pieces to make sure that they're leveraging all of, if assessment requirements remain, that they're leveraging all of their assessment opportunities as well as all of their credit recovery opportunities. But we are developing plans and procedures to make sure data is in high school hands at the beginning, at the start of senior year, and then mid-year senior year, rather than just presenting it to the board at the end of the year. So that's one piece. And then the strategies about closing gaps, I think, are twofold. And so I won't take the responsibility or liberty of speaking for the instructional strategies that are there, but I know that Eric could speak to that, and we can get back to you in crafting a formal response. But I know that there are credit recovery and other strategies that high school is using to leverage their day to get things happening during the school year rather than just during the summer. And then from the assessment perspective, making sure that schools are aware of all of the opportunities and when students can use those alternative assessment opportunities and how they can do that, and getting them those opportunities as soon as possible, and helping schools with those lists as well and navigating that process with the state. So that's where we are in highlighting those pieces.
I wish I could have gotten this question to you earlier, because I think it would have been really useful to know, and so you might have to get it to us later, which is fine. But do you know if the ELL or the English language learners are equally divided among races?
So I do not know that for fact and truth, but knowing some things about the demographics of our district, I would say the answer is no.
Okay.
But we can get the definitive answer and the breakdown of that for you.
So it's possible that some racial groups would score better or seem to meet greater requirements if English language learners were taken out of that, or were they?
The fallacy of the way that we present data, that the requirements of the state, or you can say the tradition of presenting data by student group or subgroup or program, is that it's this belief that any of our students lives in one category only. And so what this data doesn't present is that intersecting group. So which students are Black and English language learners, or Hispanic, Latino, and special education. And so there are, as you said, quite honestly, probably all race ethnic categories embedded into English language learner as low income and others, but we can have that kind of intersection presented as a piece of the information.
Okay, my questions, well, I had two questions. One is, how do we look at improving these credit attainment? I guess I'm curious as to whether we have any data on these groups, if they are doing any sort of enrichment activities after school. What are the impacts of taking summer programs away? Are we doing that sort of analysis on, if our students are losing the enrichment activities that, say, maybe the Asian groups have? How are we tracking, or are we tracking?
So we'll get back with you the definitive answer about what we're doing. I am not aware that we're tracking, other than official summer school participation, other enrichment activities that aren't sponsored by the district in terms of participation in that way. But I know that our high schools have a robust program in place for helping students meet their credit requirements during the school year, not just during that summer opportunity. So.
Okay, and the question that prompted me to ask that is, I always wonder about our RTC, our Refugee Transition Center that we closed, and we have 2 liaisons now, and not to take away from the work that they're doing. But I always wonder, what the numbers look like from that model when it existed versus now, and how that's possibly impacted our numbers for our ELL students. I don't know, Israel, maybe you have a better sense of that being here.
You probably get that paid.
I was like, that's something that we definitely have to get back to you on, and I couldn't answer in the moment.
Yeah, I would really like a study on that, because I think that move was done without a lot of research. I'm not sure, but that's the impression I got.
We can certainly research and
Yeah.
get that back for discussion.
Because there was a lot of after-school enrichment activities for our families and our students that is no longer, so, okay.
I have 2 also. When we're looking at the English language learners, are these students that are still in ELL, have they graduated out of ELL, but they're still considered?
So no, by definition of the state, they are still, these are current served. These aren't previously served students. And so that would be something that we'd have to provide as a separate piece. But these are classified as a state as current served. That's why the numbers are, traditionally the numbers are much lower at high school anyway, but that's why the numbers are so low, is because they are currently served in high school, not ever served throughout their Kent kind of experience or career.
Okay. Oh, and the other thing, and I know I've sort of formulated my own opinion on this, but can you give us the pros and cons of what dropping the assessments would mean to students learning, teaching?
Oh, President DeBruler.
Sorry. You can get back to me on it, or we can have a private discussion.
So what I will say, so I'll base it based on the slide that we have up. So there are clear benefits in terms of boosting the sheer number and percentage of students who have access to being considered high school graduates. What I would say is that no matter which legislative bill becomes law, one or none, what we have to consider is, what does that mean? So we always think about college and career readiness, and I think about what is the option for our students once they leave us. And so not that it has to be assessment, but how do we ensure that then our courses are equally rigorous across the state, across the district, so that we can ensure that our students have the skills to be college and career ready and do the work once they graduate. And so it doesn't have to be assessment, but I think that that's a solution in one way, but I worry if it would increase then remedial coursework in 2- and 4-year colleges. Does it increase financial burden if parents are then paying for that? So I think we have to think about the full implication of what a shift like that means. And so an increase in one area may mean a decrease in other. And have we fully investigated some of that? And I don't know, but that's what I say are the cautions and concerns. Otherwise, we'll have to get back to you with a full response, but that's the short.
That's sort of what I was thinking too. I mean, some of the things you mentioned, I was thinking that too. So thank you for that.
Karen, can I ask one additional follow-up? Sorry. On communication to parents, so existing students who may be right on that cusp, or what does that communication, and what are we providing options for them to then continue so that they can actually meet those graduation requirements going forward?
So I will take the liberty of speaking on behalf of high schools and say that they are all over both pieces, credit recovery, credit attainment, as well as the assessment piece right now. And so the students that are in those other 2 categories, the less than 20% and that 20 to 23, in order to be considered a graduate, still have the full benefit of the summer to meet those requirements as well. And so, but schools are heavily leveraging and moving all of those things. And that's why I'm hesitant to talk about this in this moment, because it is still being lived. And so one of the pieces is that, let's see, here, each of those yellow bars, the 7.9% and 7.3%, all of those students could end up in that far green bar, because they still have the opportunity to meet assessment requirements and credit requirements before the year closes. So it is possible, and our high schools are committed to that. So,
thank you.
I have another one that reminded me. Assuming that we are having credit recovery in the summer, what's the maximum amount of credits that a student could earn in the summer? I know there's the online courses that they could go quickly through, I think, but
I cannot answer that question for you. Eric, do you have?
Unlimited, we had last year, a kid earned 5 credits because they were all partial. And then, so we try not to have a kid repeat the entire course, try to match them where they left off, and then fulfill the rest.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I do have a comment.
Oh, you have it.
I want to, first of all, thank Dr. Harmon for your data and collection and analysis, and this goes to legislative requirements, whether, as Dr. Harmon mentioned, whether we have a significant change one way or the other, whether it's delinking graduation requirement or removing science or biology requirement. What we have assessed, whether the numbers flesh out exactly, here's what we do know. And my concern, I think we have a shared concern. So unless and until we remove the requirement, the assessment, the assumption is it's the assessment that's causing or serving as a barrier to successful graduation requirements. So the assumption is if we remove the barrier, assumed or not, that the closer we are to 100% is a good thing. What we're also realizing is that we're not at 100%. So what is that next step? It is course attainment. The challenge now is we already know that our students of color at disproportionately higher levels directly enroll in post-secondary, whether 2-year or 4-year college, after graduation. However, what we know, that same subgroups also do not persist at higher levels beyond their second year. So the question becomes, is the rigor of our course offerings and the alignment of our course offerings absent of an assessment? Will it not only prepare our students, will it allow us to visualize and make sure that our vision is a reality, that they're ready to excel? And we don't necessarily have that data to support that yet. So it is it's a controversial conversation. Levels of rigor. Are we, as the saying has gone, are we applying the soft bigotry of low expectations? If that is a part of our legislative plan going forward for the state. That is a conversation that's worth reflection, it's worth our consideration, and we don't have a final answer yet, but I thought it was important for us to know. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Harmon. That was very clear. Thank you. All right, moving on to our Learning First schedule. We have Mariah Martin and Cindy Prescott here to present information and answer questions.
Good afternoon. We have a few more people, so I know Christy Padilla is going to be joining us as well, and a few others. Okay. Good evening, President Bueller, members of the board, Dr. Watts, and Ms. Everett. We are pleased tonight to present our tentative agreement for the Learning First schedule that we shared with the KSD community on June the 8th. Presenting with me tonight, and maybe they'll come a little closer. That's great. Presenting with me tonight are Teacher Representative Cindy Prescott and Christy Padilla, and our principals, Beth Wallen and Mike Albrecht. If not, then he's here in spirit. They and many others have been instrumental in considering the many moving parts of developing the Learning First schedule. And it is our weekly 2-hour early release every Wednesday beginning in 2017-2018. And instead of saying all those words, we call it the Learning First schedule. Our presentation tonight will focus on 3 major areas. Number 1, why we are moving to the Learning First schedule. 2, the factors that we considered when coming to the final product. And then 3, how the district is going to implement and the timelines for some specific deliverables. And we want to make sure we're very responsive to many of the questions that our community and our parents and our students have. So one of the most important and often underutilized resources available to all of us, and the one I think about every second, is time. And in schools, It's instructional time, but it's also instructional time not just for students, but also for staff. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, how do we ensure that we best use our time to lead increased learning for students and staff? The driving question that we all have. And so the district has considered a late start, early release schedule for quite a while now. We've actually been having conversations from my understanding, 4 to 5 years. I've been here 4 years. I know it's been part of the conversations while I've been here, and I know a lot of work was done even before then. At one point early in those discussions, even before I was here, parents provided input both in small work sessions and at public board meetings. KSD has also studied various late start, early release models throughout the years. At other school districts, we've looked at what's worked for them, what's not worked for them. We've learned lessons from them. In addition, last year, KSD worked with the KSD community to do something we're very proud of, and that's to develop the new strategic plan, our KSD blueprint. And goal 1, as we have it listed here, specifically speaks to raising the academic and social and emotional learning bar and closing the pre-K 16 gaps to student achievement and college completion. The Learning First schedule is designed to meet that goal. KSD recognizes that a lack of instructional time for students, especially at the elementary level, hinders the ability of the district to effectively utilize every resource available to us to meet that goal. As we know, the achievement gap starts early. It doesn't start in high school. It starts right when they're starting in school, and often, unfortunately, continues to grow. Therefore, it is essential that KSD make a district-wide investment of instructional time at the elementary level, which currently has the shortest instructional day in the entire area. Currently, the day is 6 hours and 8 minutes. The Learning First schedule meets that need. I'd also like to talk about what this means for our staff as well. The lack of collaborative time for teachers has also hindered the ability of staff to work together to meet that goal. In John Hattie's work, he speaks of collective teacher efficacy, which means that teachers have the opportunity to learn together and are more effective as a group when they actually do that learning together. We call that professional learning communities, or PLCs, but it doesn't even have to be as formal as a PLC. It's that elbow-to-elbow work. The nature and structure of teaching itself, and I was a classroom teacher myself for 8 years, and I remember this, does not always lend to elbow-to-elbow collaboration. You're in your room with 25, 26 students or more or less. The Learning First schedule gives us the opportunity to have staff learn from one another, and we know it impacts student achievement. John Hattie's work speaks of that work happening, and it increases up to 3 years of growth in our students' achievement. So what I'd like to do now is give it an opportunity for our building leaders and our teachers to share a little bit more about the Learning First schedule. So I'm going to hand it over to Beth first.
Thank you. Good evening. So this slide here gives you an opportunity, if you will, to do some compare and contrast about what our current model looks like and the Learning First schedule looks like. So what you're probably noticing right off the bat is that we have a discrepancy in the learning day at our different levels. This new schedule brings equity to those days for all levels of the schools, elementary, middle school, and high school. Again, this was very, very important to us because, as Mariah said, and I think it's incredibly important to reiterate, right now our elementary schools are the shortest student day in our region, and that's not okay. So there is some decrease with our secondary hours. For high school, that looks like 38 hours over the course of the year and 11 hours for middle school over the course of the year. However, the schedule is a true investment in our elementary schools and also in that effort towards more teacher collaborative time. So we are seeing overall an average increase of 26 hours across the district, but 43 hours at the elementary school. Okay, for the elementary schools, what this means is giving us some flexibility and some support to have consistent focus on getting to all of our areas that we're responsible for teaching, and increases that PE piece to 100 minutes a day, which is a current requirement under basic ed. It also gives us more opportunity to really address the social and emotional learning requirements that we have in a more consistent way. For our secondary folks, and really for all of our folks, this increased collaborative time time brings lots of opportunities to talk about a myriad of things that we deal with as professionals every day and teachers are constantly grappling with. So calibrating content, this vertical alignment, talking about assessment for learning, how do we get to those kids who represent the achievement gap? And all of this work will have a direct impact on what is happening in our classrooms and student learning.
So again, why enhanced use of time for teachers? Consistent planning time for all teachers, regardless of level. For a number of years, primary and intermediate teachers at the elementary level were receiving a different amount of planning time. This will then equalize that. There will also be an increased teacher-directed time for planning. This is a very important part of the Learning First plan, because with the changes to education in the last 20 years, we're being asked to dig deeper. With this increased time, we'll have the time to create outstanding lessons to add to our repertoire, and that, of course, will benefit students. There are also increased opportunities to meet in grade level or level-alike teams to plan and learn from one another. So in the Learning First plan, professional learning communities will all meet at the same time during administrative time in each building. This will allow vertical teaming, such as between 2nd and 3rd grade or between 9th and 10th grade. It will also allow specialists to move between groups more easily. And if there is a particular student concern, all teachers who are working with that particular student can more easily meet together to formulate a plan for that student.
So I'd like to just focus a few things on how this will enhance use of time will work for families. The focus on a consistency of schedule, we heard clearly this year with the 10 late starts at 1 hour and 45 minutes, which was an awkward time, we all admit, would go away. And it would allow us to have those consistent weekly 2-hour releases. So we don't have to look at the calendar and say, is it one of those late starts? Is it not? And provide some more consistency. The movement from late start to early release, we considered that a lot as we thought about what is the right model. And as we looked at other districts, some have a late start, some have an early release. And what we realized, particularly with our students, many of our students need 2 meals a day at school. To not have breakfast during the late start was a true hardship for many, many students. And so we understand that is our role, and we're happy to provide that, and Food Nutrition Services does a wonderful job with that. So that is one of the main reasons we looked from going to the late start to the early release. And the opportunity to streamline bell schedules. Currently, we have 10 different start times at the elementary level. We're looking to decrease that down to 4 now. And really, it gives us a prime opportunity to revamp these bell schedules and bring some consistency in the dismissals and the start times, and to make the times more even. So no more 3:01 dismissal times. Yes, we have that. And so those are some ways that we can use this as an opportunity to streamline those processes. Another reason why is we look at our surrounding districts, and we have through the data analysis of this over the last few years. Every neighboring district operates either a weekly late start or an early release schedule to facilitate improved teaching and learning. Those range anything from 60 minutes to 90 minutes to 2 hours. But the focus for all of them has been on improving teaching and learning. This would impact, as we know, the fact that we need a longer instructional day at the elementary level. And so we've recognized that 28 of our 42 schools are in schools with the shortest instructional day. And so that does not make us very competitive. And so we want to make sure we address that. The additional time at elementary school also provides more opportunities to address the whole child. As we know, we're preparing globally competitive learners, and we want to make sure that we're giving them the opportunity to do that science and social studies content to the greatest extent in larger blocks of time. In addition, we want healthy children who exercise through PE and have music and have all those other opportunities. So as we move into the considerations, we heard many questions. We wanted to make sure that tonight we address many of the questions and comments and things that people wondered about this, this move. First question, why was Wednesday selected for early release? Other days were suggested. Friday was suggested. Monday was suggested. And then we looked at lots of different things. One of the main drivers as we looked at other districts with Friday early release was attendance. As the chief HR officer, I look at the Friday attendance on our current schedule, and Friday is our highest absentee date already for staff and students. So we did look at that. We also looked at the impact of an early release Friday on other districts, and we did learn that it does increase absenteeism. So that was a factor for us that we needed to consider. We also considered the fact that there are actually, if you count up all the Wednesdays in a calendar, there are actually 35 Wednesdays and only 30 Fridays. So actually 35 Wednesdays gives us more time for collaborative planning and opportunities. And then there's the psychological impact of knowing that you're going to school on a Friday, but you're only going to be there for a couple of hours and you're going to have an early release. And then you're going to have 2 days for your weekend. And so knowing that often, even if you come to school as a staff or a student person, that's a new one. If you come to school as a staff member or as a student, you're going into it knowing that you're going to be there for a shortened amount of time. And we thought about that psychological impact that may not play out on a Wednesday. One final thing, we've been doing Wednesdays for a long time, and we kept thinking about all the changes that we're making, and we thought if we changed the day of the week, that's another change. That was one other factor we considered. So a question we've gotten is, why does KSD still have a midwinter break, and does that break impact the length of the school day? Actually, the midwinter break does not impact the length of the school day. It impacts the length of the school year, which is a bit of a different animal, and it's an important one to think about, and it comes about when we think about the working calendar, which, by the way, is a mandatory subject of bargaining, and we can talk about what that process is. But having a midwinter break or not having a midwinter break would not give us more instructional time in regards to an early release. It would only add days or subtract days from the end of the school year, depending on which option we had. Selecting, one question was selecting 4 2-hour early release days versus a 1 full day a month. And the focus time each week on collaborative planning, that planning that's going to happen just in time for that week and that analysis of data that's in real time is important to do on a weekly basis rather than a monthly basis. And as a former professional developer, I can tell you that 2-hour stints at time coming together is much more effective than a long 8-hour time doing that. And then the purpose of workshop days, many have asked, will the workshop days go away with the early release schedule? And the reason that we have those workshop days outside of the 35 early release days are because that is when we're doing a lot of the grading and report card preparation. There's some goal setting, but they also provide full learning days when you have a trainer come in. Now, we couldn't do those 35 times, or even if we wanted to cut it down to once a month, but once in a while for a half-day training, the conference days work well for those. So I'm going to pass it over to, and we'll talk a little bit about how we're going to implement this.
So we certainly understand that we need to help our kids and families figure out what they're going to do and how we're going to support our kids during this early release time. I can tell you that we have a team of people up here at the district that have been working at record speed to identify and communicate with our current and potential community partners and providers. Tomorrow, we're going to have our first meeting with all of those people that we've invited. We've offered a day and an evening option, and this is going to give us an opportunity to share our new Learning First schedule with them, which will have, direct and indirect impacts, of course, to their programs as well, but also give them an opportunity to make some decisions and talk to us about if they can or might want to support this in this effort going forward towards our goal of having an option in every elementary school. We have a follow-up meeting scheduled with those folks on June 22nd, and as indicated up here, this is work that's going to continue and be updated throughout the summer.
So as the KEA president, I've had opportunity to receive feedback from some of our teachers. And there have been a group of teachers who represent programs in our district, and so I wanted to take some time to talk to you about the considerations that we've made for some special populations in our district. The first of all is preschool. So preschool students currently attend school 4 days a week, and then Friday currently is the time where teachers plan, collaborate, perhaps do family visits, but also do some child find work. So instead of Fridays, that would now occur on Wednesdays. And so students would attend school on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. We also considered our top program. The intent is to have all students attend on Wednesdays. So currently during our late start, students don't attend school, but clearly students need to attend school 5 days a week. So we made some considerations there. We're working with transportation to provide as many opportunities for students to also work in the community as much as possible on Wednesdays. And then the third consideration was looking at our inclusive ed department and students who currently are on IEPs. Obviously, if the length of the day is going to change, there are going to be adjustments to IEPs that need to be made. It's my understanding that Inclusive Ed is working with the Educational Service District to implement a plan to reflect changes to instructional minutes in a way that is efficient and minimally disruptive, but also in compliance. That's an important piece of this. So, thank you.
One note I'd like to make about the preschools, our ECE preschools are the ones that are in school 4 days a week. Our regular preschools are in school 5 days a week, and we will make sure that and they will continue to be in school 5 days a week, but we will adjust the schedules. Speaking of schedules, we want to make sure we address that's been a question several people have asked. They want to know when those bell schedules are going to be shared. We have done some wonderful work in the last week in really ensuring not only that we're streamlining everything, but we're considering student safety. As we know, with the elementary school day adding 32 minutes, and many of our schools, elementary schools, start at a later time currently, and we thought about what that would look like in the end. So what I can share with you is that all start and end times will be distributed on or before June 21st. We look to get those out as quickly as possible. We are streamlining the bus schedules, as I shared with you earlier, going from 10 start times down to 4 at the elementary level. And I can share with you that all schools will be dismissed before 4 p.m. So there will not be a school that's dismissed after 4 due to the new schedule. And we're continuing to look at different ways that we can streamline and tighten and provide as many options for our parents as possible on all of these issues. So with this, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to ask questions.
You want to take questions and then?
Yeah, I'll ask one.
Okay.
And then maybe ask more later.
Yeah, we've got people from the audience who want to speak also, so.
So, Mariah, out of the districts in the area, do you know the breakout between Friday and Wednesday?
I do, and I love when I know the answer to a question when it's asked. So actually, I was thinking, I will tell you the surrounding districts. So Highline has an early release on Fridays. Auburn has a Monday late start. Puyallup has a Monday late start. Federal Way has a Wednesday early release. Renton has a Friday late start. And Tahoma has an early release on Fridays.
What was the last one?
Tahoma.
And for reals, do you know how long they've been doing that?
For real?
It's just mumbling. How long have they been doing
For reals, like for real, like, okay. Okay.
So, well, I was going to attach a question to that, but then I got distracted by what I said. How long have they been doing Friday?
Which school districts? The ones that are doing Fridays?
Highline, Renton, Tahoma.
I don't know the answer to that. All of the school districts, like I don't believe any started just last year, but I would have to check on that.
Okay. 'Cause it's
And some school districts have switched their days as well. So some started on Fridays, and then one moved. I believed one school district in particular moved. I'm not sure right now which one that was, but I can follow up with you and let you know when they started.
Yeah, because for the last 6 years, I've been pushing this Friday deal because I'm the kind of guy that consistently thinks he knows better, and then when I know that I don't know better than the experts, it's embarrassing, but also enlightening. And so I'm still really struggling with accepting that Friday is a bad option, because clearly I think from what parents have said over the last 6 years, that's better for their families. They can cram more work in during the week and get out of work earlier on a Friday than they can a Wednesday. So I'm still struggling with the Friday thing. I'll stop there for now.
Russ, I'd just like to add, pardon me, that I've just recently spoken to the president of the Snoqualmie Education Association, and they changed from Fridays because while our families are absolutely important, our teachers are important too, and after a whole week of working and then on a Friday afternoon, it's hard to get the full benefit of those hours. So as Mariah mentioned, some people have moved away from that as the most effective use of staff time.
That's it for now. I think I've got some more later.
Anybody else want to ask anything before we hear from audience people?
Oh, I just have a quick comment that I, too, was leaning towards the Fridays, and I think we forget how complex this issue is, until we hear all of the different departments talk about it, the special programs, the transportation. There are so many moving parts. It's not just picking a day and going with it because it's convenient for us. And we also have to remember our teachers are also parents. So I think we've had this us versus them type of situation, and it really isn't. We're looking at the best interest of our kids and what is the best interest of our staff members and our families, and we're looking at options to support our families in this huge change. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for all your work, because I had no idea how comprehensive this is until I started reading on all the data and all the information that was shared the last several days.
Absolutely, and I would like to recognize many, about 25, 26 staff from the district and schools on this task force, constantly thinking about every question from transportation to IEPs to preschool to all the different components, because we didn't want to leave anything out. And certainly, the ease of this for parents was a major factor for us as we were considering all the options. The difficulty in big decisions is you have to consider many, many, many factors. And so, but it certainly was a factor we considered.
So I'd like to echo what Maya said. I know that there's a lot of work that goes into it. And I know myself professionally, by the time I get to Friday afternoons, I even don't schedule meetings on Friday afternoons with people because they're not there as much. But so I do appreciate all the work. So one of the questions I have is, as we go forward, what are we doing as far as being able to measure how this impacts our students positively? So have we started to look at what we're going to be looking at and just say, okay, yes, this decision was a positive impact, which we expect it to be?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I think that we're still developing a lot of things, but certainly that's one of the things we're going to be thinking about. Everything we do, right, should lead to increased student achievement. The great thing about the Learning First schedule is that it's both administrative directed time, where administrators have some very important things they want to do to lead their school forward, and there's also teacher directed time, which as a former teacher, I know the value in that too, to have that opportunity to work with my colleagues on some, maybe an assessment that we've been thinking about doing. So it provides this multiple multi-layered approach on how to address our practice as professionals. And so we'll continue to be working with our principals to think about how do we measure. We've already begun measuring our progress in ways. Beth, is there anything you would add to that? Or
I would just say that we'll absolutely be looking at it. It's going to be a natural because we're always looking at assessment data, always, especially in schools that have strong PLC cultures. This time of year, teachers are pretty obsessed with their assessment data that's coming in daily. But I also think we need to make sure that we're really careful to look at it and think about all the other variables that go into that information. So a lot of the things that Dr. Harmon spoke to as well. So yeah, definitely something on our radar.
I'm going to ask did you have something?
Go ahead.
I'm going to ask a rhetorical question that I'm going to answer myself, because I know it's a huge issue in the audience. It was on Facebook. And that is, well, how come the public wasn't involved? And there are two answers from my own opinion, or two answers that I'm pretty aware of that would be said. One is it's a bargained issue. This is between the district and the union. My answer, quite frankly, if you ask me, why didn't you involve the community? Well, we already knew the opinion here. It was very strong and very vocal 3 years ago. And for me to ask the general public and the parents that support the district, how do you feel about increasing from 9 days to 35? I know the answer. It's significant opposition. This has been something that I've been wanting to do for a number of years, because when I make the decisions on the school board, I put the student first. And we have been putting, when I say we, Olympia, the federal government, an inordinate amount of stress on teachers. Their job satisfaction has been tanking. It's one thing after another, and there's been no give. This is the give they desperately need to be an effective teacher, and secondly, a happy and effective employee. So while the general public has a hard time accepting this, from my point of view, it was extremely patronizing to say, hey, what do you think about, when we really had every intention of doing this eventually. So I'm sorry you feel left out, but we really did know. I was not surprised by a single negative comment on Facebook about we're left out of the process. Nobody cares about what we think. No, we know. We knew. This is a big deal. But for me, I put the student first, and then really the job satisfaction and the effectiveness of our workforce that we have just been pummeling for a number of years. So I know it's a big point of concern, but that's where I personally feel, you know, it's been a grumpy week for me ever since we made the announcement. But I still actually have slept very well at night, because when we put the student first and our teachers second, this is a no-brainer. It really is.
Russ, I'd just like to add something to your comments as well. Whenever there is a big change like this, we have to expect that there will be a reaction. I myself don't like change. And if I wasn't retiring this year, then I would be in the middle of all of this next year too, and I would also be feeling some angst about it. I think in the beginning, too, the first couple years of something that's this big, such a big difference for elementary, there are going to be bugs, and there will be aggravation about that. I think it takes a couple of years, really, to put everything in place and have it run smoothly, and for people to get used to it. So whenever I make a change in my life, I always tell myself, I will hate it for a month. And then you're kind of used to it after that. So I think we have to just roll with this and expect that there might be some aggravations. But like you said, in the end, this is what's good for students and good for our staff in order to do the very best job for our students possible.
Yeah, and my last 13 or 14 years in Issaquah, we had early release on Wednesdays, and I've always been in favor of this, and it feels like it's just taken way too long to do this for our teachers and our students, because we know, like Ezra said, we know that teachers have really been slammed with a lot of new things all at once a couple of years ago, and it's a lot of hard work, and we just want to give them that bright feeling so they can go and have that bright feeling with their students, really teach well. So
one last thing, just a hanging chad for me. And I wasn't quite sure how to bring this up, but you gave me the 2 words that I needed. For 6 years, President's Week, what if we know how the public feels? What if you looked at that in the final stages of bargaining? I guess that's it.
That's, yes, anything can be a subject of bargaining.
All right, thank you. We'll take some comments from the questions from the audience. Again, just a reminder, this is you have 3 minutes at the podium over here. Please, we'll have a timer going. Please keep it to 3 minutes so we can move on, because this is going to end up being a late meeting. I'll call you up. One person will be on deck at the mic, and the next person will be on deck and just address us. This is also our time just to listen. We don't respond at this time. We hear you. We hear what you say. We take notes, and we work from that. So we have Robin Ramsey up first and Holly Jensen on deck.
All right, I promise I'll be timing myself as well. So I have to admit that when I first saw this in an email, I was shocked. And I actually twofold am impacted by this. I'm a sports coach at the elementary school, and I also teach piano in the afternoons. And so I even called the school and said, hey, what's going on? And while I was talking to the secretary, she informed me at the time that she was halfway through reading it. So I was shocked that something that was going to dramatically impact the schools this big, that the administration didn't even get a heads up or anything, and that we were all kind of left out in the dark. So I know that that was maybe on purpose so that they were able to roll this forward or address the teachers in time for negotiations for their contracts. But I think out of respect for those schools and out of respect for the parents, that you treat us all like adults and you give us that opportunity to kind of give us a heads up. The other part is, as a sports coach, I've seen the amount of impact. I mean, you guys talked about it earlier today in your meeting, that the athletics program does for these kids. Well, the teachers are the ones that help teach that. We really struggle to get coaches going. I mean, most of these wonderful elementary schools are able to have a track program that's run by the Kent Parks, and it's an amazing program, and it does so much for these kids. But that's an after-school program that's run on Monday and Wednesdays. So when you do a 2-hour early release on Wednesday, those kids all of a sudden don't have track coaches because their track coaches are participating in teacher collaboration time. And all of a sudden, those kids, those hundreds and hundreds of kids, don't have track coaches anymore. And I mean, we've talked about what's going to happen then. Do you expect them to come back 2 hours later? Where's the transportation for that? So I was a little frustrated with that, and it would be nice to see how that was going to be addressed for our athletics programs that run on Wednesdays. The other part, too, is sometimes more isn't better. Sometimes more is just more. Especially for these elementary kids, to go for almost an entire full workday and only get a 20-minute break for lunch. We're all given information as parents that we have to put their lunches in easy-to-open containers because their lunches are so short that if we, heaven forbid, give them a container that's hard to open, that they're not even going to get a chance to really eat because they spent most of the time just trying to open their containers. Or, heaven forbid, they have to go to the bathroom, then that's going to be like half their lunchtime instead of their eating time. So it'd be interesting to see if this extending daytime, that's better, from what I'm hearing, better for teachers, not really better for the students, will actually give them an opportunity to be able to not be slammed constantly with just testing and worksheets, but also be able to actually have increased education time. I guess that's the bulk of what I wanted to say, my 3 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, Holly Jensen is up, and Tatia Davis is on deck. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Okay. This might seem kind of tangential at first to what we're talking about. Hopefully it will become clear how it is related by the time I get to the end. My son is a first grader at Carriage Crest, and I was shocked to find out that students have 20 minutes for lunch. Fellow parents were also surprised when I asked them. I finally got up the nerve to talk to the school principal, and he said the main obstacles were the teachers' contracts, transportation schedules, and the fact that it would require a longer school day. So in light of the Learning First changes that were just discussed, it seems like giving our students 10 more minutes is possible and that there is flexibility. So let's see. I volunteer once a week, and I eat lunch with my son on those days that I go in. We have 20 minutes to walk to the cafeteria, buy or pick up his lunch bag, or buy his lunch, find a place to sit, use the bathroom, wash our hands, clean up the table after we're done eating, get excused to recess. Guess how much time is left to actually eat? About 10 minutes for a first grader. I can't eat that fast. When we give our kids only 20 minutes, they lose out on time to wash their hands and be sanitary before eating. They lose out on using the bathroom when they should. They lose out on time to eat their fruit and vegetables and be healthy. They lose out on their time to visit and make friends and learn how to socialize. They lose out on time to relax. And we want social and emotional, we want to consider the social and emotional welfare of our students, right? They don't get sufficient calories and nutrition to develop neural connections and healthy bodies. What should lunchtime look like for our kids? They should have 5 minutes to go to the bathroom and wash their hands, 5 minutes to walk to the cafeteria and get their lunch, 15 minutes at least to sit down and eat and maybe even visit. 5 minutes to finish eating, clean up, and wait to be excused to their class or recess. By law in Washington State, adult workers must be allowed 30 minutes for lunch if they work a 5-hour shift. Most prisons allow inmates 30 minutes for lunch. I had 30 minutes for lunch when I was in elementary school. At some point, this change was made to go to 20 minutes. And I think we've all just become complacent or uninformed, possibly. So I ask that, I ask that as you rework your bell schedules and the logistics of Learning First, let's take care of our kids' basic needs, and give them 30 minutes for lunch, please.
Thank you. Tatia Davis is up, and Brooke Valentine on deck.
Hi, my name is Tasha Davis. The spelling is kind of funny, I know. Will you have a timer that goes off up there to let me know? Good, thank you. So I appreciate what you said, that you knew how parents would react. However, the school board is supposed to be our link and represent us as families and parents to the school district. So the decision-making process was really disappointing to me, and as you saw on Facebook, to a lot of other families. Not only the ones that posted on Facebook, but just at our PTA meeting that we had at my school the other night. The families were very surprised and actually very amenable to the idea after they were included in the conversation and it was really explained to them. But in the beginning, just feeling left out did make them feel like it was us against them. So I would just like to remind the district that we've spent, and the board, we've spent a lot of money on outside consultants to come in and tell us that parents want a voice. Nothing for us without us, I think, is one of the main things that I've heard. So having our voice heard, even if you already think you know what we're going to say or how we're going to react, is still important. There are elections coming up where we decide who represents us and who listens to us and will share our voices. Just this November coming up. So I want to know how you'll include families in big decisions like this that impact us very directly and the most, really. The impact for teachers is excellent, and maybe it will be for our students too, but it really does impact our work schedules, and we arrange our whole lives around school, so we deserve to be consulted at least. One of the things that I've heard too is that on those Wednesday early releases, that the school district will try and have a lot of options for families, but I see a lot of problems with that. We're having a budget crisis already. So the burden of that is going to be on families. What can we do with our students? Because now they have to go and do something whether they want to or not. We have to find a place for them. And that's my time.
Thank you for adhering to it. Tasha, got it. So Brooke, you're up next, and then Tim Robnett is on deck.
Hello, board. Thank you, President DeBuehler, Dr. Watts, and board of directors for this time. You know, I had really thought about what I was going to say, but I got so pissed off by what Director Hanscom just said about including community that I almost forgot it all. When you include community, you give them a chance to grow and learn with you. You give them understanding. You don't, you ask this community to vote on bonds and levies and be involved and pay tax dollars to this school, and then when you say you know their voice or you don't want to hear it because you saw comments on Facebook, it's just disrespectful. I think, so what did I want to, I know that teachers need time, and I appreciate that over the years that we've been able to come up with a plan that doesn't take away from student time, because teachers do need more time to collaborate, and I'm glad we found a way to do that. I do have a couple concerns, older concerns, not my new concern that I'm so mad right now. And just to look at your high school and middle school schedules, when you were doing a late or early release every once a month, they had that just one day that was funky, their schedule, trying to get all 6 classes in that short schedule. Now they have it every week, and my kids and kids I've talked to have said that day is kind of a waste. There's not really, academic learning going on in a large degree. So to look at that and make sure you're aware of how that is impacted in middle and high school. And also I've heard from kids who are in Running Start who are concerned, and they're talking about, well, we'll just skip on Wednesday. We won't go to our 6th period. So just to watch the Running Start. And then my other thought is when we talk about, and I hear that this has been going on for years, and then I hear things like we're working at record speed. Those don't equate to each other. Like if you've been working on this for years, then why is the community meeting to talk to providers tomorrow? Why wasn't it weeks ago to talk about how they could support students during those times when you're giving the early release? And I know a lot of community members. I talked to a lot of community members. I felt like I heard more about the strategic plan. I was more aware about the strategic plan. Community was more included in the strategic plan, even than they were in this process. Nobody that I talked to knew about the rollout for this, and a lot of people were really upset because we like to be included. It gives us an opportunity to share our concerns with you ahead of time before you make a plan, and it gives us an opportunity to learn the reasoning behind why you're making this plan so that we can support you also. So, thank you.
All right. Tim Robinette is up, and somebody that starts with L is on deck.
Lisa?
Barros? Is it Lisa? Oh, maybe Harris? Yeah, maybe. Hi, Tim.
Thank you for this opportunity to have an open forum. The question I have is, on the Wednesdays, the provisions that you're trying to put in place for childcare, because I have 2 elementary kids, will it be equitable across all elementary schools? That was going to be an important factor. The other question that I had, with the extended day, we in this area in the winter lose daylight. And as you know, safety's first. And when kids are going home, will they be visibly seen by cars when we're at dusk? And so I want to make sure that our kids are being safe. Thank you.
So Lisa and Leslie Bingham is on deck. Sorry.
When I first got this email from, I believe it was Dr. Watts, I thought, great, my child's finally going to get some extra attention. And then when I started digging around in it, I'm like, oh, not so much. So I felt lied to start with, because it said 26 hours, your child's getting 26 hours more time. And then when you started digging around in the email and clicking on this and that and working it out, it wasn't the case. So I'm going to read the email that I didn't send, but I'm going to read it anyway. So the subject line is 26 hours, really? What a bombshell to drop on parents of an entire school district 12 days before the end of the school year. Getting out early 1 day a week serves no purpose to the students or parents of this district. This will be a costly endeavor for all of those involved. The calculation per your infographic would be a loss of almost 38 hours of instructional time for a high schooler, which I'll have next year. Not an additional 26 as told in the email. Adding 5 minutes in per day translates to 50 seconds per class. What do you believe a student to learn in 50 seconds per class? The answer is nothing. More time to waste waiting for the bell to ring. Therefore, a total loss of 5 minutes per day, which will equate to another 15 hours wasted, for a total loss of 52.5 hours. If this is such a good model, have the teachers collaborate for 50 seconds and see what they can accomplish. Our children deserve better than this, which you are trying to shovel. Our children deserve what we pay for, a full day of learning, 180 days a year. You have squandered our dollars once again by giving more to adults than you do to the children. You have used our children as guinea pigs over the past 5 years with all the curriculum changes and ridiculous testing schedules, that it is a wonder that they learn anything. 3 years in a row, my daughter had curriculum changes in math. How can you learn from that? What you should have done was gotten rid of that miserable late start and February's midwinter break, and then added some time to the day. Wow, imagine how much they would increase their learning. The pathetic excuses you give in the email sound like a child's. Well, all the other neighboring districts are doing it. Well, if all the other districts use corporal punishment, would you? This follows the excuse that all my friends get to do it, so if they would jump off the bridge, would you? It's amazing that families of 26,000 students will have to disrupt their entire schedules to accommodate 2,000 teachers. This decision is costly for families that will need daycare, which will cost way more than getting their child the additional breakfast once per month. Costly the community as crime goes up when children are unsupervised during the day for those people who cannot afford child care. I have one more little few sentences. Costly to the environment as parents will need to get their children from school and then back out again for extracurricular sports and activities, which will contribute to gridlock, which is already taking over our crowded streets, and costly in parents' times. Did you consider anything other than benefits to the few to the detriment of many? Clearly doesn't appear so. Appears to be the same as hiring 2 assistant superintendents at $500,000 per year while cutting the children's activity buses after school.
Thank you. Leslie Bingham is up, and Stacy Miller is on deck.
I'll make this quick. I just want to say,
you recognized 4 amazing schools that got awards with 6 hours and 8 minutes of their instruction time a day. They were able to do it. So maybe instead of spending all the resources trying to develop this, why don't you find out what those schools are doing and make that across the district? The other thing I want to say is you made it a point to say that the Wednesday would be better for the teachers. It's a more effective time. What does that mean for my 5-year-old that will be in school next year? An adult isn't able to be effective on a Friday afternoon, but he is. That's what I feel that you're saying to me. Also, 4 p.m. is still late. Even if it's before 4 p.m., that's still late for these young children. That's all. Thank you.
Stacy Miller's up, and Stephanie McNeely is on deck.
Hi, my name's Stacy. I actually wasn't going to speak. This is my first board meeting I've attended. I have a son in first grade, so this is kind of my first experience. And I wasn't going to speak. I was just kind of get informed. But what you said really was insulting to me. Of course students are first. Of course we put our children first. That is our number one priority. But what else is first in my house is family. And extending the school year out till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, sorry, I'm really nervous, means that we lose out on family time. We lose out on important things like extracurricular activities, which is a very important part of growth for me and my children. Homework for us, we've made a decision that if you push school out that late, homework is not going to be number one priority. If they're going to have extended school day, we're going to have family time. We're going to eat dinner together as a family because there are very important lessons in that too. I want to say that we do support teachers. Of course we support teachers. It's why we volunteer. It's why we donate. I'm going to spend my first year on the PTA board next year because I believe that you have to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. If I want to make change, I got to get involved. And you always preach collaboration. You preach that community needs to be involved. Parents need to be more involved. Nobody was involved in this. And for you just to assume that there's going to be opposition is not fair. I wasn't opposed. I was angry that it was sprung on us without having a say. I'm a nurse. I'm held accountable, held to a very high standard every single day of my life, even as a parent. What is going to be done to hold these administrators and these teachers accountable for these early dismissals? Because right now, my first 2 years at Covington Elementary School has been horrible. My son is amazing. He's such a good learner. He's a self-manager is what they call him at that school. You know what? In his 2 years at that school, 1 report card. 1. I've had 1 conference with a teacher the entire time because of the instability, and I've had nobody respond to me. And that is very discouraging. So when I say I want to be involved, I want to be involved on levels, even at this level. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity for us to share. I actually was not going to also speak tonight. My husband said, just listen and learn. And so I'm actually coming as a former teacher. I used to teach high school and middle school. Right now I'm teaching 3 different art docent classes, and I'm also involved with the BTSA at my school. I have a middle schooler and I have 2 elementary students. Now, as a former high school and middle school teacher, I am more accustomed to a different type of planning than possibly my kids' elementary school teachers. But I am here because before all this was announced, I have been struggling with our calendar on its own before the 35 days were added. And I will give you an example from next year's calendar of what I mean by struggling with it. We talk about consistency. And to me, when my student goes to school on October 9th for 2 days, full days, then has a half day, an early release day, 1 full day, and then no school day, which I know is a state in-service day, and then again, a weekend break, insert 2 more full school days, 1 early release day, 2 full school days, and another weekend break. and then a whole week of half days for teacher conferences. Then 2 more full days, early release day, 1 full day, and another full day off. And it continues because that is starting November, which we know will have also Thanksgiving, and then we go to 2 weeks in December, then you have December off, etc. As a former teacher, when I taught for units, excuse me, my mouth is very dry, it would be very difficult for me to feel like I am doing an adequate job, and that would be adequate. I want to do a fantastic job teaching, not an adequate job, for me to be spending good instructional time with my students. So, my suggestion for next year, I'm going to be emailing each of you what I would consider a good schedule based on all the things you need, your early release, but something that to me would give better consistency to our schedule so that we have more consistent time together for instructional time. So I wanted to let you know that I will be doing that. So you can be watching it for it. But that is my concern as a former teacher. My mouth is incredibly dry, sorry. I want to support our teachers. So the fact that they are getting this time to collaborate, to me, is very important. I don't personally know if the 2 hours, the full time, is needed. I've looked at 12 different districts. I know there's other variety of options out there. So, but I do want to support them with that as well. So
thank you.
Anyways, that's mine.
Brian? Brian? Yep.
I can be up that quickly. I have 3 children currently at Horizon, with a 4th that will be joining in a few years, I believe at the new Covington Elementary School, hopefully by that time. My mom was a full-time teacher back in Las Vegas and is a substitute teacher here in the school district. I think my concern is just about this. I'm not as concerned about the longer day, as long as we're, again, taking safety into consideration. I would rather look at earlier start times than later end times. I have a 7-year-old who doesn't deal well with the length of school today, but he's a top reader in his class and does very well, but adding time is going to be difficult and tough for him socially wise. I should say behaviorally wise, but we're working on that. The Wednesday versus Friday seems like an easy compromise. It seems like we're making this change as hard as possible on the parents. Wednesday versus Friday, again, the students are going to have just as hard a time late on a Friday. In my job, I don't schedule meetings late on Fridays because I know people are going to need that time to do whatever they need to do. And if I schedule a meeting late on a Friday, no one's going to show up. Now, again, I understand that's hard for the teachers as well, but it's going to be just as hard for our students. And it makes an easier compromise for us to kind of take the rest of the change rather than trying to pile it all on at once. The other piece is the midwinter break. Again, I'm going to bring this up because if we're going to be doing what our neighboring districts are doing with our school days, my understanding is less of our neighboring districts have the midwinter break, but doesn't seem to be high on the priority list. And it is, when I moved up here from Nevada many years ago, and we explained midwinter break to family and others elsewhere, it's just a very uncommon thing, but yet we still continue to do it while we're trying to bring these other things more in line with our neighboring school districts. So I really want to look at that being strongly encouraged to be changed as well with our bargaining process. So I believe that's all I have. Just wanted to make sure my voice is heard here. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to 4.0, Board of Directors discussion and approval. So 4.01, second reading and adoption of revised policy 3240, student conduct expectations and reasonable sanctions. Need a motion to approve the second reading and adoption of revised policy 3240, student conduct expectations and reasonable sanctions.
I so move.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Are there any questions?
No.
All right. All those in favor of adopting the second reading and adoption of the revised policy 3240, student conduct expectations and reasonable sanctions, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, 4.0, second reading and adoption of revised policy 3241, classroom management, discipline, and corrective actions. We need a motion to approve the second reading and adoption of the revised policy 3241, classroom management, discipline, and corrective actions.
I so move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Do I have any questions?
No?
Okay. All those in favor of the motion to approve the second reading and adoption of revised policy 3241, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
You meant to say aye.
Little late aye.
Yes.
Okay. 4.03, the second reading and adoption of new policy 4217, accessible communications. We need a motion to approve the second reading and adoption of new policy 4217, accessible communications.
I so move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any questions?
No, I'll just comment, thank you for changing the title of that.
Yeah.
To reflect what it is.
Yeah. All those in favor of the motion to approve the second reading and adoption of new policy 4217, accessible communications, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, we have on to the consent agenda. Do we have anybody wants to pull any items from the consent agenda?
Yes. Shall I go? I'd like to pull 5.13, resource adoption since time immemorial tribal sovereignty curriculum. I believe Teresa is here to speak about it.
Yeah. Hang on, Teresa, we need to do the rest of it first, and then we'll get to you. I know you've been waiting patiently. Thank you. I'd like to pull 5.09 through 512, so it's right to it's all the adoptions. Anybody want to pull anything else? Okay, so we need a motion to approve the consent agenda items with consent agenda minus items 5.09 through 5.13.
I so move.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor of the consent agenda minus 5.09 through 5.13, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right. Teresa, now.
Which one do you want this time? This one or this one? This one? Okay.
Usually just over there. And Penny, Cole is on deck.
Right here. Okay. So, good evening, Madam President and the committee members, the school board members. I've been waiting a long time, so I'm kind of exhausted right now. Half of our parent committee's gone now, but we're so happy to be here. And Superintendent Watts. So this STI adoption I've been waiting for about 12 years. I've been working on this very hard to have it, see it adopted into the public school system in the Kent School District that I'm honored to be in. But I first wanted to say that we have a Muckleshoot representative here. This is Kathy Calvert, and we're very honored to have you. And part of our protocol is that we gift them, and we'll make this quick. But we're honored to be on the Muckleshoot land right now that we're on. So we're honoring our Muckleshoots. So our Muckleshoot chairperson, who's the head of our parent advisory committee, is here, Dennis D'Ambrosio. He's a Muckleshoot. Our other student and parent were Muckleshoots. They had to leave. And then I would like Kathy to introduce a very special guest we have that wanted to come and support and thank the district for adopting the curriculum.
I have the distinct pleasure to introduce to the room and to the board Chief Andy de Los Angeles of the Snoqualmie tribe. And so we're very honored to have Chief Andy here representing this evening.
Thank you.
And Chief Andy wanted to say that he is grateful that you're willing and able to adopt this curriculum. So thank you.
Thank you.
And we're very honored to have them here. In addition, I have a lot of support. Michael, come on up. This is Michael Vendiola. And would you like to introduce yourself?
Tagualapo TD, Shits Chelsea Arakwe Ichu, in our Northern Lachute language, come from Swinomish, and that means welcome friends and relatives, each and every one of you. And I just I work for the Office of Native Education through the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. And we oversee the since time immemorial and provide training and support. And I'm very honored to be asked as a guest here. Thank you, Teresa, for your tremendous work. Tonight's meeting, just very honored to be here to witness the work that you go through. It's tremendous work that you're doing, and this is the honoring, my hands go up to you as that you're trying to accomplish. And it was like a roller coaster of emotions of celebrating and working with the community. So just on my behalf of trying to offer some advice and guidance for the implementation of the since time immemorial, there's two main myths that usually need to be dispelled when implementing the curriculum. The first one is that it only pertains to tribal students, and we want to make sure that it does, that everyone knows that it does pertain to all students within the state of Washington. And the second one is that that the burden of the implementation falls upon the Indian education programs within the districts, and we also want to make sure that the districts know that it is a district-wide implementation process. And so with this adoption that you're taking on, it's a tremendous opportunity to really incorporate all the areas of the district and the folks that can incorporate the social studies supplement. So would love to come and support the implementation. That's what our office does, and certainly we'll be working with Teresa and anyone who wants to step forward to do that work. So thank you for that.
And in addition, with the ESSA Every Student Succeeds Act, we know that we have to partner with our nearest tribe, which is, anybody know? Raise your hand. Muckleshoots, right. So we're so honored to have the Muckleshoot here, representative. And you can say something real quick. I'm trying to hurry really fast.
I would just like to let you know that prior to my working for my tribe at Muckleshoot, I worked for Enumclaw School District, and I was a part of helping to pilot the Since Time Immemorial project at that point, and we had the largest group of teachers that were participating, and this is an easy add for your district. The training is free for the teachers to go to. You get to have a chance to work with neighboring tribes, and it really does educate students as to the importance of sovereignty as well as treaties and understanding the first people of this nation. And I found when I worked at Enumclaw with 41 different tribes represented Enumclaw School District, those Native students who were Muckleshoot as well as other Natives had distinct pride in being able to see a Native focus that is sometimes absent in our classrooms, and to have that included. And so this is just a great add on your part, and I just applaud you for looking into this and adding it to your school district.
Thank you.
And then one more thing, we have Penny and Brian who would like to give you a thank you song, and that's part of our protocol. In addition, our lady at the end, she's the Enumclaw Native American Program Director. You're on.
Good evening. My name's Penny Octet Cole. I'm a member of the Ho-Chunk Nation, Black River Falls, Wisconsin, married into the coastal tribes. And we also piloted, well, I'm not in education anymore. I've moved on from working in education, but I don't mind going back to it and supporting, Teresa and other Indian education programs in the school districts, but I just want to thank you all for taking on that choice. It's a good choice, and it's a good curriculum, and I hope that your staff and administrators will utilize the families in your community to support this curriculum.
You'll definitely learn more than what's written in the books. This is a Love for the People song, so it's love for our relatives here. Whoa, 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 Thank you.
Carissa is from KM, and she's our co-valedictorian, and she's a Navajo. Yay! So you accepted it, right?
Not yet. All right, the other things that I wanted to speak to were all the curriculum adoptions. I just want to make sure that they're covered financially.
Wait, so we need to, are we going to vote on 13 now?
Oh.
I mean, we could put it with all of them.
Yeah, we could.
Our practice has been to do all the items pulled out in one motion,
Okay.
but it doesn't matter. Any
Just
way
make
you
sure you include it.
Yeah, it's here.
Okay.
So, do we have?
In terms of the adoptions, the since time immemorial there's no cost. In the traditions and encounters, which is 5.10, that one was previously purchased. It's for AP World History. It was previously purchased last year as part of a field test. The field test worked out so well, we want to put it in as an official resource, but we don't need to purchase anything else. The Take Branche 5.09, we were going to that, but the licenses for access to the materials are up this year, so we were going to have to re-up with licenses. So the cost of the materials and the new licenses, we updated, took that opportunity to update our resources. And also with the Spanish 5.11, Spanish one, were very old. And we, as you know, we have a curriculum review cycle as part of the board procedure 2020P, and we have had to veer away from some of the adoptions due to budget implications, but these are ones that we could cover within the textbook budget. We can have to request extra money, and 2 of them didn't cost anything anyway.
That's even better. Okay, thanks, Ann. All right, so we need a motion to approve 5.09 through 5.13.
I so move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of approving items 5.09 through 5.13, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right. Moving on to Board of Directors informational. First reading of policy 5009, workplace civility. Do we have any questions?
No?
I have a quick comment. I would like that to strongly reference some of our other policies, like our harassment, intimidation, bullying, and I don't know if it was just a boilerplate template, but I didn't feel like it was strong enough given what has recently occurred in our schools. I would really like for it, and I know that in the past I've asked about this regarding staff comfort in schools, and the response has always been, well, there's a policy under HR, and under staff, there's a policy. So if we're now calling out a workplace policy, I would really like stronger language than what's in here. And I can discuss specifics later, but I just wanted to say that. Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to say anything about that one? Okay, 6.02 general fund object of expenditure report for April. Any questions?
No.
6.0.
Can we say no to her? Because she keeps wondering. She waits for an answer, and we never give her one. Karen.
Some people need 20 seconds of think time. That's
Okay.
what a teacher knows anyway. Okay. So 6.03, the April 2017 financial statement. Anything about that?
No.
Thank you. 6.04, project budget closeouts. Any questions on that?
No.
No.
Okay, so we are on to communication from our audience. And Phil, if you're still here, bless you. Did you wait?
He didn't.
You didn't. Okay, he got it up here after the student achievement and graduation, so, okay. All right, so moving on, Dr. Watts, for your superintendent report.
Thank you, President DeBruler, members of the board, and Ms. Everett, community, staff, friends. So I remember Mom told me a long time ago, you can tell someone you hate them in a nice way. Don't you ever say that, because that's the worst thing you could say. But that was not lost on me then, that if I could say the worst thing that I could possibly say to someone in a nice way, then that was the standard. I could share news, information with anyone and keep their dignity intact. The word hate is not lost on me in these last several weeks, in that incidents that have occurred in our schools that have been brought to my attention, or that I have learned about or had conversations with those who were intimately involved. It is, for lack of a better word, it's concerning. It is it's disturbing, and at the same time, it increases our sense of urgency of what I believe is our first and foremost responsibility: to lead with love, with equity, excellence, and community in mind. And that means that what we're discovering right now, it is not so much that this is a blame that's placed on our schools or our individuals in those schools. It is a realization that we are in times that aren't necessarily different. They may be different to some, but we are in times where some individuals may feel emboldened or empowered to say or do things that they otherwise would not. One could call it cowardly acts. One could call them just hurtful acts to those who don't mean them any harm. At the end of the day, I'm identifying it. I am I am bringing it to the forefront verbally because it needs to stop. I also realize that schools are school districts are a part of communities. And I'm not naive that these hateful acts that have occurred, perceived or real, they're real to some and real to me, and we have to have a solution in mind, and we'll be hearing more about what that solution is sooner than later. But I do want us to recognize that as a part of our community, we do have a responsibility. As the saying goes, if we see something, say something. If someone is saying or doing something that you know is bringing or putting someone else in harm's way, what should we be doing? How should we be responding to our fellow human beings? I'll be remaining close and in contact with those who have been impacted. I appreciate our staff and our teachers and our support staff and our board who have been intimately involved in this process, gathering information, drawing conclusions, and developing a plan going forward that our entire community will be a part of. We'll be better as a result of this, but we have to identify the fact that this can't be normalized as a part of our Kent School District community. I have to say that, and I have to use that as a motivator, and I look forward to our community being a part of this solution. That concludes my report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Watts. Anybody want to go first?
Yeah, I'll just say something quickly. You know, I honestly can't think of why I haven't attended a top graduation before, and I'm just so upset with myself because it was just a thing of beauty. I mean, I had to stop myself from just crying like a baby, like probably 5 or 6 times. That for me, the most eloquent part is really believing that the students that went, those students in that class really are at their highest potential, that they are working. And when we have so many other youth with so many advantages and they're not reaching their potential, to me, it was the power of love, it was the power of attention, it was the power of support, and it was the highlight of this year for me so far. And it was just great to thank you, Maya, for really just like getting on my case a little bit on attending, because I will definitely try my hardest not to, there's no try, I will do my best to not miss another one.
So, yeah, I also, I always enjoy the TOPS graduation. It's fun to see some of the students that I know that I've had contact with over the years reach that graduation point, the things that they can do, and just the pure energy, which I know as we go on to this graduation season and as we're winding up the year, I always look forward to graduations to see the excitement in the students and their potential, and knowing as we're working hard to make sure that we're putting those supports in place so that all our students can reach that point. I know as we had our graduation report tonight, and as we're really looking at what things that can we put into place to make sure that all our students have those opportunities, and not just the opportunities in high school, but going beyond that. And as we look at what we do to support our early learners, and really making sure that all those students have that potential and know that they are supported to go forward. So I know there's still a lot of work left to do in the school year, and I appreciate all that everyone is doing to make sure that we get there and supporting those students, because it really does make a difference to those students. So thank you.
Okay, I also wanted to add to Dr. Watt's comments. I just want to say that, one of the great things about our board is that we recognize, even though we don't always state it, we recognize when we don't always get it right. And I think in the case of one of our teachers who was affected by hate, one of the things that we don't always do is we don't ask them for solutions to the issues that are happening. And and we sort of kind of say this is how it's always been, but we don't get to that solution point. And I really appreciate that Dr. Watts got on the phone and spoke with the individual for an hour, but it was really difficult to understand how did we learn about these sort of things, by social media. How does that happen? So we have a lot of work to do in terms of understanding how communication works in this district. Many of us, we're not on social media very much, and if you're not on it, you miss out. And so we got to figure out a way to do this, without having to be on social media 24 hours. We have a lot of discussions regarding communications that are coming up, but we have a lot of work to do on that end. We continue to admit that. But I think moving forward, we have more sensitivity about being aware of our building environment and what's happening in our classrooms, in the district office, with staff. And I really look forward to this workplace civility. I love it. Being that strong place, where we can go to strengthen, how we deal with communication and how people are treated in the workplace.
Well said. Well, I'm not going to talk about very much. This morning, Dr. Watts, Israel Vela, and I went to Kent Lake and talked with the band students and got a chance to really let them ask questions and clarify some of their questions about the Victoria situation. And I think it went well. Pretty sure it did. The band director seemed really pleased that we were there, and they said it meant a lot. So I thought that went really well. The other thing is, was it yesterday? Was it KPA, the mentor celebration? Just time's flying. I love it. A lot of people there, and my mentee got to see, she looked around, she said, wow, I didn't know there were this many mentors here and mentees. And I said, yeah, and they're not all here. So it was just really fun. And I'm looking forward to continuing with my 3 girls next year. So that's all being said. All right. If no one has anything else, we are late and we are adjourned. Thank you for staying, folks.